Part 20, Reminiscing on Regret. Listen, our testimonies are less about who we were and what we did, and more about who Christ is and what he has done for us. I believe that God gave me these opportunities to teach me an important lesson. I can be a light for him, even if I consider my testimony insignificant to other testimonies. Matthew 5:16 says, "Let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." Think about this. God is our artist and we are his sculptures. He is constantly refining us, molding us, and telling his story through us. Back to the story. On Christmas Day, Randy got a phone call from Will. Will shared with him that he appreciated having an opportunity to chat with him yesterday while at the event and thanked him for serving. And though it wasn't an easy decision, he had spoken with Big Mama and they both thought it was best that he refrained from serving at any more events. And this tore Randy into pieces. He was so upset about it, and he couldn't understand how they made the decision for him to be removed from serving, but not me. He claimed he never disrespected me, and my words were more harsh than his. Blame shifting is sometimes more subtle than gaslighting and way harder to see. To be clear, both tactics are verbally abusive and depend on an imbalance of power in the relationship between the person using them and the person on the receiving end. Some of the most common blame shifting techniques. Number one, playing victim. This is one of the most common ones. Since this situation paints me as a victim, he was quick to turn the tables because they always need to be the biggest victim. So instead of addressing the legitimate concerns, he brought up something completely unrelated from the past where he claimed I hurt him. Be careful, because before you know it, you're the one apologizing to them. Number two, minimizing your feelings. The blame is no longer on them for misbehaving, but instead on you for reacting to their misbehavior. Ironically, if you ever criticize a narcissist the way they regularly criticize you, they flip out. So it's pretty bizarre when they blame you for having thin skin. Number three, arguing about the argument. Instead of discussing your legitimate concerns, they comment on your tone and accuse you of doing things that they doing, like playing the victim, gaslighting, projecting. The blame is no longer on them, but instead the way you approach the argument. Number four, guilt tripping and pity stories. Everyone goes through trials and tribulations, but healthy individuals don't use those experiences as excuses to harm others. And they certainly don't bring up those pity stories to conveniently avoid taking responsibility for their behavior. Number five, the stink bomb. This is the last resort. Usually when they've been blatantly caught or called out for something they know they did, they throw a unfounded, terrible accusation at you. Back to the story. He then tells me that people in ministry are not who they claim to be, and they were never his real friends anyway. He began telling me how they didn't care about him and they all wanted Jill anyway. This is exactly what he felt like they wanted from the beginning, was for me to show up with my pretty self to the events on my own so that they could have a shot at me. I told him, man, that's not the case, and I understood that sometimes things just don't work out. On top of all of this, he made the impulsive decision to remove himself from the online ministries leadership team that we met at on the Zoom call. He indicated that God was trying to get his attention and he needed to be obedient given the series of events that had been occurring. We were also in a group chat with Big Mama and the people that we served with, so he requested to be removed from the chat as soon as he got that call because of others in the chat telling everybody Merry Christmas, sharing the joy of the holiday with one another. I later found out that same day that Big Mama texted Randy and told him that her banner was broken, and she offered her Cash App and other means of being able to repay for the banner. She told him the banner costed over $200. Run me my money. Randy said, oh, you could tell your mama that I ain't break her little banner and I ain't paying for something that was already broke. Y'all, Randy broke that banner. So he texted her back and told her, I ain't break your banner, so I ain't paying for it. This really where Big Mama had drew that line. She knew he did. He knew he did. And I knew he did. He broke it. But the spitefulness he showed was unnecessary. I called her up and I told her, I said, my mama pay for it. This is ridiculous. As I was speaking with her, she told me that the next event was going to be held on New Year's Eve, and it was a chili cookout out there in Tent City. Again, I'm going to be back down there with my rounds. Randy was banned from serving, but not Jill. So I told her I'd be there. Fast forward, on December 30th, my oldest had a birthday party at the skating rink. Our church had an event that evening to celebrate the new year coming in. So I went to my stylist, shout out to Pix, and let her color my hair red, baby. And she cut it all off. I was so fly. I later saw a post a couple of months after this, and it's so funny. Watch out for a woman that color her hair red and cut it. She about to step into a new chapter in her life, and indeed I was. The attire that night for the church was tuxedo ball dress type, so you know I put it on. One thing about Jill, I'm going to put it on my mother. So we made it to the skating rink, and I get to my baby. His daddy side of the people there. So I started introducing Randy to cousins and close friends. So I spotted one of my Q dog friends across the room, and I told Randy, give me 1 second. I went over to him and I said, what's up, doggy? He was like, man, what's good, my girl? Why you had your tail at homecoming? No lie, I was outside the year prior, baby, at homecoming. But I told him, man, this man ain't about to let me come to no homecoming, bro. I'm engaged now. And, he also went, to y'all's alma mater too. He ain't going, bro. So then I asked, my homeboy, how your daddy doing? His dad is a pastor. And the conversation only lasted maybe 2 minutes because he was headed out the door. I came back to my seat. Randy said, who was that? I said, oh, that's my homeboy. Hey, that's one of my cute dog friends. He actually went to the same college you went to. Do you recognize him? Instead of him saying no, he went straight in. Why you ain't introduce me to your little friend then? I said, for what? Matter of fact, he was in a rush. I ain't thought nothing about introducing him to nobody but my fault. Randy was furious. He started popping off about how disrespectful and inconsiderate I was, because obviously it was something more than what I was telling him. Like me and A must have had something going on in the past. Bro, if anything, I wanted that boy daddy, not him. But that's beside the point. The man was going back and forth with me about how wrong that was and how he was my fiance and I needed to introduce him to anybody I come in contact with. Yeah, for what though? Because it's not happening. What happens when a narcissist realizes you refuse to be controlled? They have something that's called narcissistic injury, which is that fragile self that they have. And once that scab is picked, and then that narcissistic rage, it's just beneath the surface, and that'll come flying out in a couple of different ways. For a covert narcissist, they might be a little bit more passive aggressive. They might make themselves into a victim, but the narcissistic rage will start to creep up, and they start to be something different than what you might have seen in the past. Dealing with a narcissist is like getting arrested. Anything you do, say, or try will be used against you, but they will want to try to do that even more. So in these type of situations, they want to try to get you. So I told Michael and Walker that I needed to get to church, and I hope that he enjoys his party. But the fact that it was my son's birthday and he started a whole argument at the skating rink was just horrible. It was just horrible. Looking back, every event that was meant to be of significance in my life was shattered by envy or him projecting his insecurity. We argued all the way to church. I told him again this was not working. And I remember looking at apartments on the way to church that night. That's when I started the search of a new house for me and my children. We sat apart from one another at church, and I slept in my children's room that night with the door locked and the dresser behind the door because I ain't even want to be bothered. The night he argued with me about pretending to call Carter after we had left the movies, he came into the kids' room that night when I was sleeping and asked me to come to bed with him. I didn't want to go through that no more. The next day, I woke up and I told him that I was going to serve at the chili cookout. He told me that if that was what I desired to do, he didn't mind because I wasn't banned from serving. It didn't matter no way. I was going out there. So I went out there. He made dinner reservations for us for that evening because it was New Year's Eve. He contacted me nonstop, y'all, when I was serving. What time you gonna be at home? I'm looking at your location. Why you ain't left yet? Just constantly making me time watch. I didn't leave until I was good and damn ready. And serving with them was peaceful this time around. No one spoke of Randy. No one treated me differently. In fact, they loved on me even more. And I appreciated it. I told Big Mama that night, though, I got to get away from this man ASAP. She told me that day, whenever you ready, I got the truck. Just call me. I'm going to get you moved ASAP. The only thing that I thought about constantly was my bankruptcy situation. It's going to be hard for me to find somewhere to stay. But God. Part 21. Reminiscing on regret. I made it home later that evening. He was, of course, heated and he didn't want to go out to dinner no more. I told him I'd go without you. But he eventually got dressed and got in the vehicle. I drove us there. He asked me one question at the restaurant, and I wish y'all that I remember what he asked me, but I didn't answer him the way he wanted me to, and that caused us to argue in the restaurant. I walked out and told him I would be in the truck because I drove. He walked right past my vehicle and got in an Uber to take him home. I called Nicole and told her about it, and she just couldn't understand how this godly man was reacting in the way that he was. Like, what could possibly be wrong? Narcissists commonly overreact. They exaggerate and they dramatize situations and statements. They do this because they are always in survival mode. If you've been in a long-term relationship with a narcissist, you may have grown accustomed to that narcissist's over-the-top reactions. Those reactions may still puzzle you and frighten you. You have also undoubtedly been emotionally drained by their reactions. If you watch your own response to the narcissist's overreaction, you may catch yourself having a flight response or wanting to duck and cover. At the least, you likely feel yourself flinching. The continuous extreme reactions of a narcissist take an emotional toll on the people around them. Narcissists are completely unaware that their extreme behavior has any effect on anyone else. Listen, if you've ever dealt with anybody like this, I'm so sorry that your pure heart had to endure this. Make sure that you seek emotional therapy with a trusted professional. I would recommend something like BetterHelp. Now, it's the new year, and I am actively in seminary, and we are participating in the 21-day fast at the church we're attending. Now, anytime I participate in a fast, it's like heaven comes down here to see about me because I get all my question answers within the first 24 hours. The pastor even said, whatever is troubling you now will be a thing of the past in the next 21 days. And oh, baby, was that not a lie? Straight facts. I asked Randy if he would be interested in going to one session with me with Dr. Smith. Dr. Smith specializes in Christian counseling, and I knew that his background was legit. It was a setup. Randy agreed, especially when I told him I would pay for it. And it was the best $100 I ever spent because this was the grand finale, baby. On January 12th, we visited Dr. Smith's office. Dr. Smith was delicate, and he told us that he knew that we were engaged to be married, and congratulations, and he was willing to counsel us. But first, he wanted to ask a very important question. He turned to Randy and he said, "Why did you ask her to marry you?" Randy said, "At the time, that's what I thought God was telling me to do." Dr. Smith said, "So God told you that this was your wife?" He said, "That's what I thought I heard." Then he turned to me and said, "Why did you say yes?" And honest to God, I couldn't answer that question. Mainly because I don't know why I said yes. I was uncertain of how to answer anything given the mental state that I was in, because I could just feel that anything I said could or would be used against me later. I began to cry, and I believe Randy threw his head back in disgust because Dr. Smith looked at him and said, "So God told you that this was your wife and she crying like she is, and you sitting there unconcerned. Instead, you sitting there with your arms folded and your nose in the air as your bride is obviously hurting over something." I'm going to tell you this, and honestly, I don't care how you take it. If you hurting this woman, whether physically or emotionally, God is not pleased. Women are to be the helpmeet, an addition, not a throwaway, treated like precious gifts from God. This is a woman of God, and you claim to be a man of God. Am I correct? He looked at him and he said, "I am a man of God," with an attitude, just like Jody said, "I am a man." Dr. Smith handed me a tissue and said, "Oh, the Holy Spirit about to set something free in here tonight." He asked Randy, "How's your relationship with your parents?" Randy responded and told him that he speaks to both of them, but his father was kind of in and out of his life. And Dr. Smith said, "Well, do you have children?" He said, "Yeah, I got one daughter." He said, "Well, what about your daughter's mom? What about her? How's that relationship?" Dr. Smith noticed Randy's arms came unfolded and his demeanor became defensive. He said, "Yeah, there it is. So what's their relationship like?" Randy shut completely down after that question. He completely clocked out of the session. Now, according to Randy, the daughter's mom had a baby on him while he was away at college. You could still see that pain on him, and he hadn't worked through that. We ended the session, and I received prayer from Dr. Smith, and I headed home. We were halfway home, and I asked Randy, "Why did you shut down like that?" And he became so verbally abusive while discussing it. I pulled over in the park in the neighborhood, and I said, "Can we please pray? Because I feel There's something that is about to manifest. And if I don't pray it down right now, it's going to be bad. He told me that I could pray, but don't touch him. He didn't want no oil poured on him. And I needed to hurry up so we could get back to the house because he had stuff to do. I prayed and drove right in that driveway and sat there. I told the Lord that I had no more strength to do this alone. Fight for me. And that night he did. I took a shower and I got in that bed. I began reading 1 Samuel. I was 60 seconds away from finishing the chapter. And Randy walked in that bedroom and tell me, cut your lamp off because I'm ready to go to sleep. I told him, give me 60 seconds to finish up this chapter. I was only asking for 60 seconds. He walked over to my side of the bed and tell me, turn it off or I'm going to unplug it for you. I started recording him. He said, I don't care about you recording me. This is my house. I said, turn it off. As he got closer, I got up and blocked the lamp. I said, now, this is what I meant earlier. Give me a moment to finish this part of the Bible. He said, go in the front room and finish reading. I'm ready to go to bed. Y'all, he wouldn't let it go. He said, you know what? Don't worry about it. I know what to do. This man went to the garage and cut the electricity off on the breaker box to where there was no lights on in the entire house. Hunter was in his room sleep. Lauren was in her room watching TV. He told Lauren to sit in the front room and watch the TV in there. He cut the electricity on just in that room only. I cut on my phone flashlight and continued reading. He came back in the room and started loudly blasting gospel music, trying to distract me from reading. I asked him to turn the music down and he wouldn't. I said, you're going to wake the baby up, man. Why are you doing this? This went on for about 3 to 4 hours. He set his phone up again to record and I was livid. The spiritual attack at this point was becoming more and more fierce. The enemy wasn't letting up, but my God gonna always step. This was a Friday the 13th, I'll never forget. So around 4 a.m. he got back up and he turned the electricity back on in the house because it's cold. It's in the beginning of January. I didn't sleep at all that night. I ain't know that night was the last night in that house. I got out the bed that morning to get dressed for work. But before I made it to the bathroom, he looked at me and he said, give me my ring back. And he said, let me see how you act without this damn ring being on your finger. I was like, man, whatever. I got to go to work, child. I closed that bathroom door and started getting dressed. He burst through that door and kept demanding for that ring. I kept closing the door and he kept opening it. I said, well, if you want the ring, I'm moving out today. He said, well, you can leave, but you won't get anything out this house. So go ahead. Y'all, I got my brother on the phone. I told him, hey, I need you here now. Randy just stood in the door of that bathroom with this evil cold stare in his eyes, continuously saying, give me my damn ring. Give me my ring back. I want to add that I never wanted to keep the ring. I used this ring as leverage because I knew I needed my things out of this man's house. Remember that Louis he bought for me? He went and grabbed that purse off the kitchen table and dumped all my belongings out on the couch. Y'all know I ran him his rights about that bag. I said, now, why would I want to take that fake ass purse, Randy? It's clear it's from the gate, baby. That's definitely something you could keep, my boy. Get it to your next hole. I wasn't taking that no way. I called Big Mama. I told her, hey, I need that truck ASAP. It's time. She immediately said, let me call Will and we coming. Randy told me, you really think they coming to help you with a truck even when they get here, they ain't coming in my house. Ain't nobody coming in my house. As he outside talking, because my brother done pulled up at this point, I'm still in the house trying to pack stuff up. So it was at least 30 degrees outside. My brother asked to come in and he told him, no, man, I ain't letting you in my house. See, he thought my brother would come in to help me move my stuff. Randy said, but we could talk in my garage. I stayed in the house, but from my understanding, he pulled out his permit to carry, his gun permit, and showed my brother. And my brother pulled his out and showed him. Since we going permit for permit, Randy ain't gonna kill nobody, let alone his size is the only thing that's gonna scare anybody. He a big Barney for real in real life. You know, the I love you, you love me, purple thing. Because realistically, he a 6-year-old in an adult body. That's a little boy, man. Part 22, Reminiscing on Regret. The main reason a narcissist uses intimidation is so you fear them, meaning you will conform to their demands out of fear. They also use it to manipulate you and cause you more confusion within your own mind with subtle threats that make you wonder if it's a real threat. Why else would you tell somebody that you own a gun and you have a permit to carry is beyond me. However, he thought that it was necessary. Lauren and Hannah slept right through all of this. God's blessing, favor, really. It was now around 7:30. Big Mama called me back. She said, hey, baby, Will coming, but give him a minute. He's got to get a truck. So during this time, I'm packing things up. Y'all, the level of pettiness this man had with watching me and saying, yeah, that's mine, you ain't taking that, just going on and on. Even telling me so far as if I took anything out of that house that I knew wasn't mine or that he purchased for me, he would take me to court to show proof of purchase. I told him, good luck, because you're broke anyway. Going to court costs money, baby. And I failed to mention that Randy was indeed broke. I was the breadwinner all day long. I noticed quickly that money was a big issue in that household, though. Financially, I was a big convenience for him. So much so that he still expected me to pay the portion of my bills as I was packing. Child, please, that's dead. I ended up contacting the constable's office and requesting for officers to show up so that there will be no issue with getting my things out, because he swore up and down I wasn't getting none out that house. The constables came and told him she gonna get everything out of here that she came with, even if we have to stay to see to it. He was very combative with law enforcement about they wouldn't allow in his house. I might have forgotten to mention this, y'all. Randy was a tenant. He was renting that house. He wasn't the owner. Even though he got a post on social media saying that he closed on that house. Yeah, that's good for the social media optics, but in real life, you have a landlord, baby. But that day, it was my house this, my house that. Just going crazy at the mouth. Here's a message for you. Listen to me. We are all capable of abuse without even realizing it. When we are provoked, angry, hurt, or scared, we can all be guilty of judging others, withholding, criticism, and controlling. But when we can see where we went wrong, learn from it, apologize for it, and not do it again, abusers take it to a whole new level and just pass the blame. It's healthy to be accountable for your own actions, but we should never take accountability for someone else's. No matter what is said or done, no one is entitled to abuse another person. Even good people have their limits. And if you're around people who push you to those limits, it's time to walk away from them. If they are narcissistic or not, abuse is abuse. And it's time to leave them in your past and look toward your future. And then my future arrived. Will came on in with that truck and he bagged it up in that driveway just like Big Mama said he would. And guess what? Will was going through it at this time too with all sorts of spiritual attack because he was setting himself up to be the mighty man of God he was called to be. But he knew that I needed help. His wife knew I needed help. They came in with open arms. Will asked Randy to step outside to speak with him. Will and Randy's relationship was a bit rocky because they had just banned him from community service. So Will had to be gentle. The bigger focus was getting me out successfully. So they went outside to talk. Will told him, hey man, I'm here on assignment. I am wanting to help her move and I need to be sure you understand that it is time for her to move around. This is going to turn out to be extremely dangerous if you all do not do this now. Randy continuously said, I ain't letting nobody in my house until I have my ring. I don't care about you helping her move, but I need that ring back. Now, according to him, a couple of hours prior, nobody could come in his house. Not even law enforcement, but wow, the narrative changed. Wonder why? Because see, Will was on assignment and prayer can cause demons to stand down at the name of Jesus. Will had been praying in the spirit when he received the phone call initially. Will even instructed his wife to go in the house and get Hunter from his bedroom. I packed a small book bag for the baby and she drove off with him. But before she left, she said, sis, don't worry, I got this baby. Do what need to be done. He's safe with me. Walker, of course, was with his daddy. Will walked in and he said, Miss Jill, where do I start? But listen, I only have to tell you one thing. If he tells you that something is his, and even if you know it ain't, leave it here. Those spirits will attach to that thing and remember whose you are. Whatever is left behind, God will restore it. Let me make mention that Randy moved me by himself. And Will moved me out by himself. God equipped that boy to move beds, dressers, TVs, everything on his own. At one point, my brother was able to come in and grab small things, but the bigger items were moved by Dolly, by Will. Since Randy wanted to be spiteful, I took everything down to a shower curtain that I brought in that house. I left nothing that I didn't need. I wasn't trying to step foot back into that house at all. I gave him the ring back and I took this picture outside his house that day sitting in the back of the U-Haul. I hope I could post it. the joy I experienced for getting out, but the peace I had not even knowing where God was about to lead me. Randy followed us to the storage unit because remember that washer that I put in that house? Well, he put his washer in my storage unit. Yeah, come get it. And Will unloaded all my belongings into the storage unit later that day, and I stayed at my brother's for the night. I did apply for an apartment on that day, but I was denied because of my bankruptcy. Oh boy, did that put a hole in my heart, because the next thing was finding a place for us to live. The following Saturday, I searched and searched. I called. Everybody said the same thing. Hey, we don't accept bankruptcies. On Monday of the next week, I stopped eating. I knew I was not going to be able to keep invading my brother's home because I know that I have 2 small kids and my brother has his own family. But he never told me like, hey, get out. He was going to hold it down for as long as I needed him to, but still. That Wednesday morning, I was up in a depressed state feeding my baby Chick-fil-A. And at this moment, I was not having any luck at all finding a place to live. But I closed my eyes and I said, God, I know that you will provide. You always have and you always will. I opened my eyes, and as I looked out that window, I saw some apartments peeking over the trees that are kind of in my brother's backyard. I called out to my brother and I said, hey man, I ain't tried calling them apartments right behind you. They pretty nice, ain't it? I wonder what they'll say. He said, call them. You won't know until you ask. Man, I called the front office and I said, good morning, ma'am. My name is Jillian. I've been all around the world and back again, looking for an apartment for my children and I, but I have a small issue. I recently filed bankruptcy. Do you all accept applicants with bankruptcy? She said, oh, yes, ma'am, we do. May I have your email address so that I may forward you the application? My heart. I said, ma'am, did I hear you correctly? You all allow bankruptcies at this complex? She said, yes, ma'am. Since COVID, we have changed our policy to become more lenient with applicants that may have filed bankruptcy or their home was foreclosed on due to the pandemic. Jobs were laying off people, and we just wanted to be sure that we gave people a chance to have a home that they can come to. The only thing different is that the security deposit will be the same amount as your rent. I gave her my email address. I completed that application within the hour. She called me back before the office closed that day with an approval and said that she could have the apartment keys ready for me on January 20th, which was 2 days later. I called Will and I asked him if he could help me move in, and he said, I got you, Queen. Let's do it. That Friday morning, I received a text message from Randy saying that he had to get things off of his checks for his sake, and he didn't need a response from me. In essence, the text was saying, I apologize for putting your kids through all of this, and you taught me so much these past few months. I still got a lot of growing to do and maturing in the Lord. I can't take back what I did, but I can only ask that you would maybe one day forgive me for how everything went down. I couldn't even believe that man had texted me that. My heart even wouldn't allow me to text back. I was done. Will got me moved in that Friday. I spent all night Friday night in my brand new apartment crying out to God with my face embedded on that floor. I mean, I was a total emotional wreck because I ended back up here again at peace, but with a loss and a void in my heart because of the turmoil I encountered that was essentially my fault again. Beat my head up against my hands saying, God, why me? What am I seeking after? What am I doing? It's preaching time, and let me be the first to say I ain't no preacher, but this story finna do it to me. Part 23, Reminiscing on Regret. Queens, we should be women learning to build our lives on the principles of God and understanding the value that we obtain that comes from our relationship with Jesus Christ. I'm reminded of a woman in the Bible who struggled with her self-worth. John chapter 4, verses 4 through 10 talks about the Samaritan woman. I suggest that you go and read that story for context. The Samaritan woman is so much like many women today, including myself. Even though the cultures we live in are different, the battles of self-worth are still the core at each of our hearts. She was a woman who didn't feel loved, accepted, or believed that she was created for a purpose. She was a woman running from something. What makes me believe this is because her actions spoke louder than any word. Women in those days usually drew water at the end of the day, not in the heat of the day. The Samaritan woman had been married 5 times, and the man she was living with now wasn't even her husband. I believe part of her drawing water at the time of the day was she would rather endure the heat of the sun than from the blazing of eyes of who would look upon her with ridicule and judgment. How many times do we find ourselves running from our past because we can't bear to carry the marks of shame any longer? She was a woman who believed the lies of what people spoke about her. Samaritans were considered to be ceremonially unclean to the Jews, and the Jews were to have no dealings with them. How many times do we believe the lies spoken over us? Words like, you'll never amount to nothing, you worthless, you a disgrace. Each of those statements are lies. We are God's workmanship. The Samaritan woman had a face-to-face encounter with Jesus. In those moments, she realized the unconditional love that he had for her, as well as the extension of his grace bestowed upon her. He also reinforced who she was in him. A woman was created in his image to fulfill his purpose. Perhaps you need to have an encounter with Jesus like the Samaritan woman and allow God to speak to you with words of grace and truth. Just as he extended his mercy, grace, and love towards her, he'll do it so with you too. I'm sure you think that's the end of reminiscing on regret, huh? Yeah, narcissists don't let you off that easy, baby. Narcissists try to win you back even after you cut them out your life. In fact, they can do that even if they were the one who ended the relationship. Here's a spoiler alert. Remember that baby? I still hadn't told y'all about that baby situation. I do have to end it for tonight though, but I promise to be back tomorrow with more of Reminiscing on Regret. Have a blessed Sunday. Part 24, Reminiscing on Regret. Narcissists need attention in order to survive. This form of attention is brought to the narcissist by a new supply, which is a girlfriend or boyfriend. In most cases, the narcissist has already spent months or weeks grooming their new supply to take your spot once they grow tired of you. This is a very typical thing for a narcissist, so please do not blame yourself as if you did something wrong. This is a very dysfunctional relationship, and soon the new supply will see this once the mask falls off. Remember, the narcissist always tells on themselves. Most narcissists will find a new supply before they ever even dump you. This means while he is cheating on you, he's already misleading and being dishonest to the next person. Take it as a blessing that you are not their toy anymore. What matters most to them is having someone who will tolerate their ways. Here's a couple of things that I've mentioned in this series that are true about narcissists. They will want you to dress the way they want you to. They will tell you who you can and cannot talk to. I wasn't really allowed to have any male friends. They want to isolate you. The narcissist will make you feel guilty about spending too much time with your friends to where you avoid going out to avoid a fight. The narcissist wants excessive admiration. They want you to post pics of them often. They want attention all the time. They want to blow up your phone. They want you to comment on all of their posts. They want to be loved, admired, highly thought of. They constantly crave approval, validation, reassurance that they're seen in the best possible light. They have little tolerance for criticism or rejection. They become enraged with people who disagree with them. Y'all, it ain't easy getting out of the grip of a narcissist. The longer you stay, once noticing that you're dealing with a narcissist makes it 100 times worse if you're trying to get out of the relationship. It's abnormal, it's unhealthy, and sometimes it can be fatal. That following Sunday after I moved in, I attended church. Yes, the same church that I had been going to with him. But this time around, my glow was different. See, God had done a thing. I presumed that people would view me as being broke down and depressed. God had me looking jovial, blessed, and rejuvenated. I was now out of that house with Randy, and me and my children were starting a new chapter. I was committed to starting over. Y'all, I made sure that there was oil dripping from every door in my new place. I needed the Holy Spirit to have angels standing outside my door on guard because I couldn't return back to such a dark place. But guess who was still watching me though? The enemy. He looked at me and he said, I ain't finished yet. Let me see if I could play with that girl once more because I've done it to her before. This is why it's so important to know what God says about you, because there is no devil that can take the word out of you when it's in you. Do you really know your word, or are you capping? Because when you're of God, you can tell because you talk different and you walk different. You don't just stand for anything or anybody. But when the devil has you bound, it's free game. And baby, at that time, it was game time. I knew the word and I knew the Lord, but the application is key. What was I applying to my life? Did I believe what it said? What example was I setting for my children, for his daughter? I ain't care back then. I was looking out for me, being a devil's advocate and destroying everything that God intended for my good. He gave me peace after my divorce. He made sure that my bills were paid, even though I was in debt. If only I would have hung in there with the Lord and not listened to my flesh. Y'all, the flesh weak. To be honest, the flesh sold out. There is nothing that can compare to what God can do if you stand in full obedience to his word. All the answers to your questions, sisters, are in the word. If you don't believe me, I dare you to open that Bible. I double dog dare you to try Jesus. So at church, I walked in, I sat down, and I got that word. I slightly turned around to my right, and I saw Randy looking dead at me. After church, I walked to grab Hunter from Children's Church, and Randy and Lauren were standing right outside those portables. Randy looked at me and said, "Hey, y'all, how y'all doing?" Boy, I was heated. Don't speak to me and my kid, nigga. He picked Hunter up and started kissing on him and hugging on him. Instantly, his daughter embraced me, and my heart couldn't even take it. Y'all, I love Lauren. I said, "I know you miss me, baby. I miss you so much." Randy then says, "If it's okay with you, I would like to take Hunter with me for a couple of hours. I know he misses daddy." Oh yeah, Hunter called him daddy. He sure did. Hunter was a baby though, y'all. He treated Hunter extremely well. Even through our arguments and fights, he didn't become different to him, but he would take things out on his daughter for some reason. I believe it could be because of the anger he has against Lauren's mama, but I don't know for sure. Y'all, I allowed him to. And before you all come for my neck, I have no idea why I did it. I never thought that he would hurt Hunter, and he never did. Being on the other side of this now and seeing how trauma bonded I was, this was unacceptable. Trauma bonding is when a deep attachment develops from a cycle of physical and or emotional abuse, or trauma followed by positive reinforcement. Trauma bonds most commonly develop in romantic relationships, and leaving these relationships can be very hard. It is difficult to process feelings after emotional or physical abuse, especially if the abuser acts loving afterward. The 7 stages of the trauma bonding cycle include love bombing, trust and dependency, criticism, gaslighting, emotional addiction, loss of self, as well as resignation and submission. A trauma bond is not a healthy relationship and is not real love. When these neurochemicals are dysregulated, it can cause an emotional addiction where a person can experience cravings for certain feelings that come from the cycle of the trauma bond. It can also cause confusing and conflicting thoughts to the point where a person begins to justify and rationalize the abuse. I suffer with brain fog now because trauma bond has affected my brain. Hunter left church with them, and I went home to prepare Sunday dinner. He texted me a little while after and asked me if he could drop Hunter off at home, and he wanted to talk to me if I would allow it. Those who are finally able to end an abusive relationship often find that they are sometimes tempted to go back to their abuser. If this happens to you, it doesn't mean you're weak. It just means that it is difficult to let go of someone you love, difficult to leave the past behind, and difficult to start all over again. Here's a suggestion. Create a why I left list. List all the reasons why you ended that relationship. For example, fear, humiliation, loss of self-esteem, the fact that you had to question your perceptions and your very sanity, physical danger, the way the abuse was affecting your children. Go over your list from time to time, especially during those times when you feel the strongest pull toward going back to your abusive partner. I did agree to allow him to come over. Now, he knew where I lived, and I didn't fear him, y'all. I fear no man, but this wasn't something that I should allow. So he comes over, and to be honest, I was worried about whether or not Lauren had been properly eaten since I left, and how she was mentally given all of this had happened. Before I left his home and moved out, she finally started to call me mom. And leaving that child was the hardest thing for me. And most of the time, I believe that God wanted me in her life because I made some tough calls in that house when it came to her. Don't mistreat nan kid around me unless you want to be on a t-shirt. I'm that mammy that don't play about other folks' children, including mine. And if your baby with me, your baby good. I ain't always made the best decisions when it come down to my children, but you're going to be under messing with my babies. So they come over to drop Hunter, and Randy is just amazed at how I had everything put together in my apartment. He wondered where all this new furniture had came from. Oh yeah, y'all, I forgot to mention something. When I moved in with Randy, I sold a bunch of stuff that I had in my house that was in the storage unit. And it was around October that year because I didn't think I would ever need it. I sold my couch, my king size bedroom set, amongst some other things. But hear me out. Material things can always be replaced. I couldn't have fit all of that in this apartment, no way. But he really couldn't wrap his head around how I was in my own place. You may think that I'm crazy because remember I told you my God gonna step. See, really I was showing the enemy in my life what God can do in less than a week. See what God has done, baby. You thought I was gonna be on the streets with my kids? My place was fully furnished. Both of my boys had beds to sleep in separately with their own bathroom. So I put up, baby, with the Sunday dinner on the stove. Bozo must have forgot who he was dealing with. I'm God's child, baby. He gonna always take care of his kids. Part 25, Reminiscing on Regret. There's several reasons a narcissist comes back. The new supply didn't work out as planned. They need a place to live or money. They're low on supply. Maybe they burned a few bridges and nobody else will deal with them. You were a great primary source of supply and they actually needed to survive. They could also be involved in criminal activity and need a hiding place. Watch out, baby. They may be in debt and they need you to pay for it. However, please do not allow them back in. This is not love. These individuals are not capable of real love. It's not because they miss you. This is all manipulation. And sometimes they attempt to come back to get additional revenge on you. Please be aware of the no contact rule and don't break the no contact rule no matter what. That means block their phone number as well as social media accounts, their emails, all of that. Never even take a look at their social media pages anymore. This will really shock the narcissist as they firmly believe that the victim will always be there for them no matter what they've done. They hate it now when supply goes no contact as it takes away their power or their control over you. It also brings it home to the narcissist that you can have a good life without them. Something that a narcissist can't believe, seeing as they drive or they thrive, from attention, and it doesn't matter if it's good or bad, being in touch with them is still attention. The narcissist does not miss you after no contact. They can't see or understand you as you are. You're only a character in their story, a mirror for their self-esteem, a tool to use, a wallet to spend, a place to crash, a meal to eat. Narcissists lack whole object relations and object constancy, meaning they can only see you in black and white terms, all good or all bad, depending on circumstances beyond your control. You can literally do everything right, and they will still discard you and only act right if they need something from you. No contact, however, is still the answer because you took away their control. You took away their power. You took back your supply. You are no longer allowing their abuse. Now, if you're struggling with no contact, I can definitely understand because it's not easy. Please seek help. Get a therapist who understands toxic behavior in individuals with narcissist disorder. The trauma bond is very difficult to break, and a good therapist will help you through the process as well as the grief process. Also, any mutual friends that you have or any new friends that you introduce the narcissist to, be very discerning of them as they are known as the narcissist flying monkeys. They will report back to the narc about any information that you have given to them. So it's best to say as little as possible about your new life after the narcissist. Flying monkeys are sometimes known as being two-faced and cruel, and it will actually make you feel as though you can't trust anyone for a while. This also does not mean that those people never cared about you or they never liked you. The narcissists have a way of turning people against you by painting you to be the bad person. They love to paint you as the narcissist instead of them. Yeah, they real delulu. Now, if the narcissist goes no contact or gives you the silent treatment, please be grateful and thank God. Don't reminisce about the very few good times. They were not real anyway. Let's pick the story back up. During that Sunday visit, Randy sits me down and he tells me that he knows that the enemy was the main reason we ain't make it. I know I need to be better for my daughter, and how could I call myself a man of God and treat you the way that I did? I mean, God told me that you were my wife, and that I'm going to do anything that I can to try to make this work. See, sympathy is something that narcissists won't need to seek. They see themselves as victims. They are always on stage, child. They want the world to see them, and they going to put on a good show. It's showtime at the Apollo. Yeah, they a mess without you, child. They can hit on hard times, and only you can save them. They need you, and only you. Y'all, he tell me that he can no longer afford that house since I moved out. And he received a letter the Friday that I moved into my new apartment that his truck was up for repossession. He also told me that he doesn't want to lose the house, and even started to contemplate on how he could move into the same apartment complex that I had just moved into. Even went as far as jokingly saying, yeah, I could just move in. Me and Laura could move in here with you and the boys and put my stuff in storage. Who? Yeah, I instantly felt so hurt for Lauren, because I could also tell that she was not even receiving the meals that I was preparing daily anymore. And after 2 weeks of being gone from that house, Randy looked like he had dropped 25 pounds and Lauren's hair was all over her head. Child, I kept that baby at the salon with me. I made sure that she had clothes every payday along with my children. She was my girl, y'all. The daughter I never had. She knew whatever she desired, and if I could supply it, she had it. Her heart was pure. I'ma always cherish that baby kisses and her hugs that she gave me. Y'all, my family even loved on that baby. And I want to address one thing while we on Lauren, because I keep seeing these comments. Her mama was very much in the picture, and she lived in Randy's hometown. Now, I still don't really know the real reason of how Lauren ended up with Randy, but I know it's because Randy had some controlling ways, and it was nothing that her mother did to lose her. She loved her baby, y'all. And I actually believe that she agreed to allow Lauren to come down here because the school districts are a little better down here. So to finish this conversation up, I told him he could live here with me and the boys. I truly had hope that he could find something in his price range that would alleviate him of his financial burden that he all of a sudden now had. So then he tells me that essentially this is why he asked me for my engagement ring back. He needed it back to make payments on the truck so he wouldn't lose it. Y'all, at this point, I was so emotionally impacted by this entire relationship, I did start thinking that I was the cause of all of this. Like, what if I wouldn't have just made a scene and just gave him the ring back? Maybe if I wouldn't have been myself around everybody, maybe he wouldn't have thought everybody wanted me. Maybe if I would have been a little bit more submissive, he would have loved me more. Y'all, I knew Randy was a narcissist. My mind knew that, but for some reason, my heart still wanted him. I loved Randy, y'all. I mean, I wanted him, and I love family. I had grew to love that man. In my mind, we could try again, right? Maybe I could fix him. Maybe I could try to start doing something different. Child, absolutely not. You can't change anybody. I can barely change myself. I can't even stay consistent enough to stick to a budget or a diet. But I thought I could change somebody. Hey, see, I was charmed by that narcissist because narcissists mirror you, and I fell in love with his qualities that were really my qualities. His hopes and dreams that was really my hopes and dreams. See, I let this person in because I'm kind, I'm trusting, I'm loyal. I'm a normally emotionally functioning human being who wants companionship. But now I mirror myself. What in me was missing that allowed me to have someone to cross my boundaries? Lie to confuse me on purpose and pull my heart back and forth like a slingshot. What wounded me was covered with a band-aid that I thought that Randy could finally heal. Y'all, it is impossible to have a healthy relationship with a person who is sick and suffering with a personality disorder. So back to the story. He did stay over about 3 hours. I remember that there was a Amazon Prime special going on with Deion Sanders on it. And I knew deep down that this man didn't love me, but I was trauma bonded. I couldn't seem to understand why or how I was allowing him around me again. I was done when I walked out that man's house on January 13th. I ain't want nothing else to do with him. But man, them narcissists have a strong hold on you that is hard to let go. So now he's asking me if he could prove to me that he would be better for me. He would make sure every day that I would see a brand new Randy. He was going to go hard in the Bible. He was going to start loving me the way that I deserve to be loved. He would never hurt me again because he knew that for him to be back in my presence again, it was a privilege. He could never allow me to go away no more. He loved me and he had to show God that he knew what it meant to have me as his blessing in his life. And I believed every bit of that sad story. Y'all, I may have said this previously, but if you've never been with a narcissist, you would not understand me at all. To you, this is just a dumb decision, and you being the perfect Patty would never. This is real, y'all. And if you check the comments on any of these videos in this series, it is more and more prominently occurring in every community. Narcissism doesn't care about no ethnicity, no gender, no religion, no status, none of that. It's happening, and it's a dangerous spirit. It's not just in intimate relationships. Folks done grew up with a narcissist, mama and daddy, auntie and uncle, grandmama, granddaddy, pastor, boss, sister, brother, neighbor, best friend. It does not play fair. And I guarantee you that you are just now being informed of who you were really in contact with all these years. Yeah, let that series go ahead and minister to you, sis. So week 1 began of us starting this new chapter. And this begins part 26 of Reminiscing on Regret.